Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, from east to west.
If you get something there from the economic zone, I will order the Navy to fire.
Challenges on the diplomatic relations between the Philippines and China continue.
Not a good time to have Chinese names in some features because we have a live dispute in the South China Sea.
From naming islands in the Philippine Rise,
kahit anong sabihin ng China, maglalagay din tayo ng Pilipinong pangalan dyan.
To the militarization in the South China Sea.
We are not being soft on China. There are ongoing bilateral talks as far as contentious South China Sea issues are concerned.
Also, almost a year after her detention, supporters of Senator Leila de Lima ask for her freedom. Former Solicitor General Florin Hilbay joins us live. And later, can you travel the world in 52 hours? Find out how on today's In Focus. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. The Foreign Affairs Department says China has committed to stop its activities on disputed areas in the South China Sea. Reports show that Beijing has finished turning 7 reefs into air and naval base structures. The government also reveals that it is aggressively pushing for joint oil and gas explorations, but with an assurance that it will not violate the Constitution. Also, it's been 1 year since her detention, or almost a year since her detention. Can Senator Leila de Lima get a taste of freedom under the Duterte administration? Let's go straight to the source of the story. Former Solicitor General Florin Hilbay. Should I call you Solgen or Attorney na lang?
Florin.
Hindi pa. I'll stick to Attorney Hilbay. Thank you again for being here, sir.
Thank you and good morning.
So much to talk about. I want to talk about that first, the press conference of Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano last Friday, where he said that I think what was new in terms of the South China Sea discussion was that we are actively or aggressively pursuing this joint oil and gas exploration with China in the disputed waters. What does that mean for the Philippines, sir?
Well, that's dangerous from the standpoint of our Constitution and from the standpoint of the decision in Philippines versus China. Philippines versus China basically declared that we have exclusive rights, and exclusive means exclusive both with respect to the language of the decision and the language of our constitutions, our Constitution, which means that joint development which assumes sharing rights, sovereign rights between China and the Philippines would be patently unconstitutional.
Is that tantamount to that? That if you, please educate us, if you engage in joint exploration first, does that mean that they have sovereign rights as well? Or you're just saying, we need your expertise, we probably need investments coming from you, China, let's do a joint venture?
Okay, there's a model, the Malampaya model, which means that they come here as investors. They don't question our exclusive rights, and then we have a sharing of profits. China's situation is different because notwithstanding our constitution, notwithstanding the decision in Philippines versus China, they're contesting sovereign rights of the Philippines over those waters. And so for
with
us,
the 9-dash line?
Yes.
Okay.
For us to recognize or to enter into a joint development agreement with them would be to impliedly recognize their rights and to waive our win in Philippines versus China.
Is that so? I mean, is that common sense already, Attorney, that if we say, come on, let's do a joint exploration, it's almost as if saying that we co-own this?
Exactly. I think we also have to look at it from the perspective of China. They don't want to do this only out of profits. They want to do this because they want to get some kind of a waiver of that decision.
And doing that would somehow give the Philippines that waiver?
Yes, would amount to a waiver from the Philippines.
But what if Secretary Alan Cayetano is saying that it's just a joint exploration? I want to see what's under there. He was basically saying what we can harvest down there. And anything we do, there will be a framework on this which will be in accordance, he says, with the Constitution and the UNCLOS. He also said the UNCLOS, sir. So where can that lead to if he says something like that?
Well, that's that's inherently incompatible with our constitution and the decision versus China. A pure economic agreement where China is an investor will accomplish the same thing. And so why would you waive the decision in Philippines versus China and violate the constitution for doing exactly the same, going for the same result?
Okay, let's listen exactly to what Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano said in his press conference last Friday.
Right now, we have not discussed, and we're not discussing development. We're discussing exploration muna. Because what's the use of the debate whether or not allowed sa Constitution ang joint development kung hindi natin alam ano ang nandyan na pwedeng i-harvest without damaging the environment.
Does it have to be China?
It doesn't have to be China. It can be anyone. But what matters is it's done by the terms of our constitution.
Okay. He was saying there was a precedent that is being questioned before the Supreme Court.
That's
He didn't really elaborate on this. Maybe you can help us out. He said, this will not violate the country's sovereignty because in 2005, there was a seismic activity between the Philippines, China, and I believe it was Vietnam, sir. But he says it's being questioned before the Supreme Court.
That was during the time of President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. Note also that that was before the decision in Philippines versus China. And so if there were any doubts prior to 2016 about our exclusive rights, about the nature of the activities that we can do within our exclusive economic zone, those doubts have already been erased by that decision.
What can people like yourself possibly do in the event that this is jump-started, this joint exploration between the Philippines and China in the disputed waters, sir?
Well,
you file a protest?
Of course, you can have resort before the courts, and our courts would have to recognize that decision in Philippines versus China as well, not only because it's beneficial to the Philippines, but because it articulates more clearly the language of our constitution.
Okay, so is this something that you would think you would file a protest against? And who do you file a protest? If you file a protest, where do you do this?
Well, it will have to be done against the government because it's the government that's waiving its rights to China in that case. And so the domestic forum will have to be the Supreme Court or some other local court.
I see. So from here, we cannot go into an international body and protest this.
We cannot bind China unless China has agreed to some arbitration mechanism.
But before we leave the South China Sea joint exploration discussion, sir, would the Supreme Court say that is within their jurisdiction if you file, for example, you file a protest on this?
Exactly. If the government enters into a joint development agreement with China, for example, then that would fall within the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court because it's a question of interpretation of our Constitution.
I see.
Our Constitution has provisions with respect to our exclusive economic zone, and you simply have to tie that up with our victory in Philippines versus China and say, hey, there's no doubt that the Philippines will have to assert its exclusive economic rights over this particular area.
Yeah. So from the South China Sea, let's go to the Benham Rise, sir. Of course, the United Nations has declared Benham Rise as part of the extended continental shelf of the Philippines, and then you have China naming 5 sea features in Benham Rise. But from my understanding, sir, we'll show some of those sea features. They did this since 2004, and then it was only, am I correct? It was in 2004. And
I'm not sure when they started naming it.
But apparently the decision of this court came out that they recognized 4 of the names in 2016, and then the 5th name was recognized in 2017.
Right.
Again, the Benham Rise, declaring as extended continental shelf of the Philippines. Tell us more.
Well, that is part of our territory. Under international, you can have sovereign rights over our exclusive economic zone and the continental shelf. But by the terms of our constitution, there's really no distinction. That's our territory. And our territory means we're the ones who have the rights
The
over
sovereign
it,
rights.
right?
Yeah.
And we have the right to name the property that we have.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And so it's about the position of our government with respect to these activities of China. It's too soft. It's as if they're acknowledging that China has rights over the area, which is consistent with the concerns of basically everyone else when it comes to the government's position.
But the
in
Secretary
China.
Cayetano was saying that Benham Rice is an American name. Why didn't we protest the Americans over this?
That was named during the colonial period when the Philippines was still under American colony. I think in the 1930s, and Benham was an American admiral who died in 1905. And so there wasn't any question that the Americans could do that at that time. Also, today, I don't think the Americans are claiming any ownership over the area. Whereas China has consistently considered even that particular area as part of the second island chain over which they want to exert some rights.
And again, when we look at that map, we're looking at the other side of the South China Sea, which Benham Rice, where Benham Rice is located.
If you look at the southernmost tip of China, up until the area, the West Philippine Sea, it's about almost 600 nautical miles away from that
The
tip.
southern tip of China.
Right.
Yeah.
Benham Rice is to the right side of
Dito sa kanan
the
ng
Philippines. And
Pilipinas,
so it's even more outrageous, for the government to have a very lax attitude.
What is the advantage of China having named them and is it a tribunal recognizing it?
Well,
what does that mean, sir?
I think we should look at it as part of the larger attempt of China to name things that they think they own. It's as simple as that. These are preparatory acts to claiming ownership over the particular area.
I think it was it Senator Antonio Trillanes who said that mag-ingat tayo dahil papangalanan nila yan, pagkatapos baka mamaya gumawa na naman daw sila ng panibagong map as like the 9-dash line map.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool us twice, shame on us. And they've done it with respect to the 9-dash line, an entirely bogus claim, and they're doing it again.
But Secretary, the spokesperson, Harry Roque, was saying that are we making too much of a big deal of China naming these 5 sea features? Here's what he said. Sa kanya, hindi dapat pinalaki iyang mga pangalan. Tayo ay nag-o-object. Pero kung di naman natin kikilalanin yan, atin naman yan. Di bahala sila sa mga buhay nila. And then he goes on to say, there's another one, that China has actually named, certain things as Siopao, Mami, lahat naman yan binigay ng Chino na pangalanan. Attorney.
I don't think we should even try to dignify that kind of a response from a government spokesperson. It's our property, it's our territory. We should be very aggressive about protecting our territory, because the moment we lose our territory, then we lose not just space, but living for Filipinos.
I need to ask you this though, sir. Isn't it our fault that we did not name any of the sea features? Please correct me if I'm wrong. In the Philippines, I'm going to start calling it Philippine rice and not Benham rice.
That's right.
Sir, hindi ba kasalanan din ng gobyerno na hindi natin pinangalanan yung certain features in the Philippine rice?
Well, the government has a lot of deficiencies. I think it's only now that we're starting to develop a maritime sense because of the aggressiveness of China. When the American bases were still in the Philippines, they basically patrolled the area for us, so we never had any
We had that big brother,
problem. Right, but when we kicked out the bases, I'm not saying that the bases are good, but when we kicked out the base, suddenly we realized there's a vacuum of power in the area, and China took advantage of that, weren't able to do something about it.
So should government also file a protest with China naming those sea features, sir?
Consistently protesting, building coalitions against an aggressive neighbor. There are a lot of allies who are willing to join us, who have joined us, actually. And so today, the irony is, it's those allies are telling the Philippines, hey,
Go.
go protect your own territory, do something about it, because it's also in your interest to protect your own territory.
We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines, coming up. Still in detention after almost a year. What lies ahead for Senator Laila De Lima? Former Solicitor General Florin Hilbay will still be with us after the break. And later, would you dare to travel the world in 52 hours? That's for today's In Focus. So we have a minute commercial, attorney. We're live on Facebook, so people are still watching us. So
Okay.
So we're going to talk about Senator Laila De Lima on when we get back live. And the senator has been in detention for almost a year.
Almost a year. 24th would be the first year.
Ano meron pong buwan ni
February, I think, is buwan ni Laila De Lima.
Okay. And I think on February 24, they're planning to bring flowers from...
We're visiting her on the 24th. There will be a lot of people there. Yeah.
Pero yung kaso, wala pa rin eh.
Well, the motion for reconsideration is pending. And that's a...
How many? Kasi di ba 3 courts? There are 3 courts.
Yeah, there are 3 courts.
You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, former Solicitor General Florin Hilbay. Sir, Senator Laila De Lima issued a statement very recently and said that it's almost been a year since her detention. But when I read that, sir, in the beginning of that press release was a lot of fantastic thank yous to you. Characterizing you and thanking you for taking on the job as her counsel. But let's do a little bit of a background again. Let's do a look back. How are the cases pending? I know there are 3 courts looking into her case in Muntinlupa. Tatlo ho yan, tatlo.
Yes, you have 3 drug-related cases and 1 case with respect to her attempt to interfere with legislative process. But the real ones are the drug-related cases before 204, 205, 206 of Muntinlupa. And with respect to the warrant of arrest that have been issued against her, we have a pending motion for reconsideration before the Supreme Court, which the court has not yet acted upon. And just to give an idea, what we told the court, there are 15 members of the court, 9 members of the court agreed to hold her in pretrial detention, and we said, wait, we looked at the decision of the 9 members of the court, the majority, and they don't even agree with respect to the nature of the charges.
What do you mean by that? Can you explain that further?
There's a debate as to what the charges really are. The Department of Justice originally charged her with drug trading, that she was the mother of all drug lords. And then the Solicitor General before the Supreme Court later said, no, the Department of Justice is wrong. It's just conspiracy. They thought about trading. And the common ground between those 2 charges is they're non-bailable.
Okay. They are
non-bailable.
Non-bailable. Okay.
And so, from our perspective, they're simply looking for a non-bailable charge against her to keep her in pre-trial and now trial detention. Now, the majority of the members of the court said, no, the court has jurisdiction over the case, the RTC, the charges are proper. But when we looked at the majority of the members of the court's decision, forget about the dissents who were on our side, just the majority of the members of the court, they weren't even in agreement with respect to the nature of the charges.
Whether she's the...
Whether the charge is drug trading or conspiracy. And so, if the wisest among the members of the highest court of the land, if the majority of the members of the court themselves cannot even agree as to the nature of the charge, then how can she know
what she's being charged?
What she's being charged with? And how can the judge conduct a trial when they don't even know what the charges are?
But attorney, is it clear to you that the 9 were not sure of the charge she's being charged with, or is that your interpretation?
Well, 6 of them were sure with respect to a different charge. 3 of them were sure with respect to a different charge. And so you don't have a majority of the members of the court who are in agreement with respect to one particular charge.
So it's as if there's 6, there's 3, and there's another 6. Tama ba?
Exactly. So at the very least, you ought to have a majority of the members of the court agree on one particular charge.
But the fact that the senator will be standing trial in the RTC, and again, it was a question before, sir, that it should have also been the ombudsman. Has that been dropped? Tapos na ho ba yun?
Here's the status of the cases. The Department of Justice, taking its cue from the Solicitor General, and some of the members of the court have sought to amend the information. And so they said, no, she is no longer a drug trader. She's now a conspirator in drug trading. Right. And the Judge Guerrero, who issued the warrant of arrest, admitted the amendment and then recused, decided to inhibit. 2 other judges, I think, have been appointed. Both of them have inhibited. It's as if no one wants to touch the case. But our basic point is, wait, you have sent to Krame, a senator of the Republic, a woman, a citizen of the nation, for charges that you are now altering. And she's been in jail for 1 year now, almost a year now. I think there's something fundamentally wrong about that. I mean, it's not very difficult to talk to a citizen and tell him or her that if you're going to be sent to jail for pre-trial detention, then at least people should know what you're being charged
with. Yeah. But so that's still being questioned before the Supreme Court as an MR. Tama ho ba, Attorney?
No, the motion for reconsideration is with respect to
arrest warrant.
The warrant of arrest and the nature of the charges.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, you're asking the Supreme Court, please look into the arrest warrant again of the senator and the kind of charge that you're charging her with.
What we told the court was, could you please, the majority of the members of the court, look at your own decision? Because if you looked at your own decision, forget about the dissenters who were on the side of Senator De Lima, you will see that you weren't even in agreement over the nature of the charge.
I wonder if the 9 will actually believe that they're not in agreement with the charge.
And we're saying, just read the decision.
Okay. How is the senator? When was the last time you saw her?
Before the holidays last year, or during the holidays last year, she looks okay. She's very, I wouldn't say happy, right? She's resigned to the fact that she might have to stay there for a while. She's very positive. She's reading a lot of books. She's performing the work of a senator. She's actually very busy performing her public functions.
In fact, I think Senator Trillanes also plans to kind of like resurrect Senator Laila De Lima's case. We have that particular statement made by Senator Antonio Trillanes. Let's listen.
Ibabalik ko lang ulit sa national consciousness yung injustice na ginawa kay Senator De Lima. Dahil 1 taon, mabilis dumaan na nakapiit siya ng wala naman siyang ginawang krimen.
Quick reaction, Attorney.
She's footnote 1 for political persecution in this country. A dissenter, someone who wanted to investigate the president, a senator of the Republic who's on the other side.
All right. Very quickly, though, charter change. I believe the commission headed by former Chief Justice Puno will be starting their meeting today. Your thoughts on charter change, sir?
I don't see any reason to open up the entire Constitution. There are ways by which we can promote or do charter change without having to open up the Constitution and do away with the gains of the 1987 Constitution. The 87 Constitution is an anti-dictatorship Constitution. There are a lot of independent institutions out there, institutions of accountability. You don't want to open that up to change.
So you believe former Chief Justice Davides' statement that it should not be changed. In fact, he said it's one of the best constitutions in the world.
It's a good constitution, and I think the problems identified by everyone who are for charter exchange are problems that can be remedied differently through an amendment of the local government code or through specific amendment, not revision of the entire constitution.
Like you're talking about probably strengthening the local government code.
Exactly.
Or another, was it, I forget who talked about fiscal decentralization
Right,
as well.
because there's
Christian Monsod, Attorney Monsod.
Exactly. There's no single definition for federalism. It's simply strengthen provinces, regions, and states. You already have the local government code. They can amend it. And an amendment of the local government code will remedy all the problems with respect to
sharing
the
of
power
resources.
of Imperial Manila, the sharing of resources. With enough political will, you can do everything that they want to do.
Former Solicitor General Florin Hilbay. Sir, pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Still ahead, this could be your ultimate travel goal. That's for today's In Focus. While we're on Facebook Live, let's talk about martial law. You were talking about it.
Okay.
Attorney, sabi niyo po, this is tantamount to what? Because the Supreme Court said extended martial law for 1 year is okay. It's constitutional, rather.
That's right. Extended martial law in Mindanao. We're worried about it because it's against all the restraints placed by the Constitution. And number two, it's prior license for the President to declare nationwide martial law.
You really think that's a possibility that he would do that, or that will happen?
Well, you wouldn't want the President to have pre-clearance to declare nationwide martial law. It becomes a Damocles sword hanging over the nation's.
Time now for today's In Focus here on The Source. How far will you go to reach your dreams? Well, for this airline executive, it took him around the world. Andrew Fisher of UAE's Etihad Airways just broke another world record for traveling around the globe in the fastest time and in the fewest number of flights, using only 4 scheduled commercial flights from Shanghai to Auckland, Buenos Aires to Amsterdam, and back to Shanghai. Andrew's journey covered more than 40,000 kilometers and a flying time of 52 hours and 34 minutes. Guinness has officially recognized his attempt for beating the previous record by 3 hours and 13 minutes. Andrew says he managed only 16 hours of sleep throughout the journey, but it was an incredible feeling to have finally achieved his dream of getting the world record, which he had been targeting for over 20 years. His advice to others pursuing their ambitions: never give up. No matter how unrealistic it might seem to others, take every opportunity to follow your passion. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.